Good morning. So if you can kindly take your seats, we'll be starting now, even though I'm told we have 18 colleagues stuck in traffic, but that to us is part of everyday life. So we'll be starting and then our colleagues will catch up later. So welcome to the second day of the EAIR 44th edition forum, where we will start off today with a keynote presentation by Professor Kalleya, Principal and CEO of this college, and the keynote speech will be followed by a book presentation. But first, some details, plan of the day and how the day will proceed from here. So following the plenary session, we will proceed to the track rooms, and today there are 38 presentations in all throughout the different tracks. Lunch will be served like yesterday at the MRC. It's a stand-up lunch. Just a note that there will be a separate aisle for those who have dietary requirements. Then that will be at 1 o'clock. From 1 to 2, that's lunch. After which there will be the annual general meeting of the EAIR, which will be held here in the plenary room. We will start again with the presentations at 3 till 4:30, when coffee will also be available. Transport for those going back to the Dolmen Hotel and the students' accommodation will leave at 5 sharp. For those joining the gala dinner, we'd also like to remind you that transport leaves to Valletta, where the gala dinner is happening, at 7:15. So 7:15, the transport will be waiting for you. But now so that's the plan of the day. I'd like to now introduce Professor Kalleya, CEO and Principal of MCAST. Professor Kalleya has been involved in vocational education and training since 2001. Before the appointment as college principal and CEO in June 2018, Professor Kalleya was Director of European Centre for the Development of Vocational Training, CEDEFOP. He served as Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Education and Employment, and he was instrumental to Malta's qualification framework. Professor Kalleya is a graduate of the Universities of Malta, Padova in Italy, and Bradford in UK, where he obtained a PhD in International Relations. He is a prolific writer and has published books and articles and has edited various publications. He's also the driving force behind many things and also behind our work. So I'd like to thank him and invite him to this first keynote speech for today. Thank you and enjoy the day.
Good morning, everyone. By the measure of that CV, I must be 92, 93 years of age. But I am not. So, good morning, everyone. I've been informed that you had a very good time yesterday, at least those who went to Melliha. So it's good to hear that. So I'm very pleased that Malta is a welcoming country for all of you. This morning's session, well, we've chosen a very difficult topic, but a topic which probably I will not say anything new to many of you, but I will try to make it as interesting as possible. And based on my experience here at MCAST, this is, by our standards, a large institution, the second largest after the University of Malta. We are very particular in the sense that we have to cater for a very wide range of students, from those having 0 qualifications to those aspiring to earn a doctoral degree, so you can imagine the span that we have to deal with. We also have a very young generation of lecturers and young people, so talking about the transformation of HEIs in an age of digital technology is quite natural for me to do so, because every day I hear something new coming from my colleagues, that they want to do something new, that there is something which we can purchase, something which would attract our learners even more. So I don't think we can avoid bringing ourselves to a situation where we have to keep moving. If you recall the quote I've chosen from Einstein yesterday morning, when he said that life is like a bicycle, you have to keep moving to keep your balance. This holds for higher education institutions, and I keep reminding myself every day, this is what I need to do. I need to keep moving, otherwise, if you stop moving, you will perish. So, the questions that I would like to explore with you this morning are basically three. Three questions which I ask myself very often. Am I moving as a principal, or as a lecturer, as a professor? Am I static in what I'm doing? Am I still doing the things I was doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago? And the second question is, have I discovered my comfortable zone and I wish to stay in it? And that is a danger as well. It happens to me, and I think it happens to many of us. A comfort zone. A book that I have read 10 years ago, which is still valid, of course. I'm not throwing everything away. I'm simply saying, how can we entice our students who speak only technology with material and with ideas which were put together ages ago or decades ago? This is a challenge for me. And the third question, am I addressing students today in the context of students today? Because even from one year to another, students are changing. And this is why, therefore, technology is, for me, an important frame of mind, if I may quote, an important frame of mind, which, at the end of the day, I need to deal with, because I have seen it happening, like many of you in the room here. First we had the blackboard, then from black it became white. And then from a whiteboard, it became an electronic board. And from an electronic board, it became a tablet. And from a tablet, it became a cloud. All of this is happening in our lives so quickly because we are conditioned by speed. Speed is what conditions our lives today. And we have to admit this is happening also in higher education institutions. Some of us are alert to it and are ready to meet the challenge. Some are not, or some are on their way to achieving this. Now, when you look at our institution, I keep saying, and you can look it up, this is one of the oldest institutions in the world. Universities have been existing for almost 1,000 years. It is no joke. This is a legacy which comes down from Bologna, which was celebrated again in 1999, and which brought into the fold also vocational and professional training with the Copenhagen process. I won't go into these European processes because I'm sure you know all about them, but what has really changed the landscape in higher education institutions is that also vocation, professional education, the applied sciences have the rights and the legitimacy, which was a word used in one of my workshops, of students climbing up the ladder of qualifications and achieving the highest possible qualifications. Up to 6 or 7 years ago, this institution had no proper research structure. And yesterday we were celebrating with Dr. De Raffaella, who is the director in research, the huge achievements we have achieved over these last 5, 6 years. But it was no coincidence. We are always being pushed by industry. These are not wake-up calls, but sometimes they are. And I must admit, industry here gives us a lot of wake-up calls. They shouldn't be doing it. Sometimes we do give them wake-up calls in terms of employees having the right skills, for example. But they do give us wake-up calls. And this is one of them. Copenhagen process was a wake-up call to all vocation, professional education institutions in higher education that they can achieve the highest level of qualifications. And because of these developments, of course, my conclusion is that higher education must address society's needs. You might be saying to yourselves, but this is nothing new. We do address society's needs. But my question remains, are we always addressing society's needs? And we will look into this in a minute. In return, of course, for those state universities or state higher education institutions such as ours, The cost of learning, the cost of research, the cost of innovation. The cost is high. And we can see from our budgets, even though in a small island, how high the budget for higher education and for education in general is. But in return, universities have become the focal point of status, prestige, power, and influence. Now, when I put these words together, I might have a little bit of a guilty conscience. Is this why I joined university or higher education institution? To have status, prestige, power, and influence. Well, many employers do say this is why some of us have joined higher education institutions. I remain silent, of course, because deep down, yes, prestige and status and power and influence is something which attracts. But on the other side of the coin, if it weren't for higher education institutions, for research, I wouldn't be speaking to something which is black here and which goes all around. I wouldn't be having lights, I wouldn't be having architecture, I wouldn't be having this room here. So everything is important, but the perception of people is important as well. And we need to take into account what that perception is in order to understand what role they would like us to play, which would be in line with their objectives, which is, at the end of the day, of course, either productivity or service rendering. But at the end of the day, it is employment, which to us is one of the most important aspects of why we're here as a higher education institution. I won't go into the details of all of this, but I thought I should remind myself more than you that organized learning required a seat, required a faculty, required disciplines. It attracted political, economic priorities. It required all of this is known to us. But we tend to forget what lies beneath the surface of this institution, how much power this institution has been given. By just looking at the construction sites that we have here, the money that is being spent on this institution, how can we not deliver? How can we not deliver when so much investment is being pumped into our institution? And this is the same for any other institutions, because an organized universities or higher education institutions, they must earn respect. They must serve as a point of reference to larger projects, important political decisions. This has happened over the years, of course. Since 1088, it has happened, and this is why universities and later higher education earned respect, because they gave to society solutions which society couldn't find on its own. These are the seat of thinking, but also the seats of action, of relevancy, of impact on society. And I think this is an important thing to remind ourselves every day. At least I do with my colleagues. And of course, in order to have all this, you need to have a well-organized structure, that's for sure. But also universities and higher education institutions have been looked at as the catalyst for change and transformation. So how can we not think of us as transforming higher education when society is expecting us to be transformationalists, if I may use the word. They expect us to transform. They expect us to transform students. They expect us to transform our own lecturers, our own professors. They expect us to transform our own knowledge, our own research into something which is readable and not just a book or a report in a library, which I'm sure many of you have seen their own research landing in a library, adoring a library, but not being put in practice. So I think we must keep reminding ourselves of these basic principles. And the structure, of course, has been the same structure for many years. I'm not surprised, and you wouldn't be surprised by seeing those lines over there. The PowerPoint presentation will be available, so you can go through it later. But in 1999, as you are aware, there was a turning point. There was a huge wake-up call. They wanted to celebrate the anniversary of the University of Bologna, and all of a sudden it occurred to us that universities and higher education institutions don't speak to each other. They have different systems. And what was the objective of a university, that people can be mobile from one university to another, it stopped over a number of years because there was no mobility structure in place. And universities were not speaking to each other because they had different systems of qualifications. Why? It was obvious, and it is still obvious today, because we claim as higher education institutions that we are independent, that we are autonomous, that we, in our own structure, we are self-contained, and we would like no interference from anyone. As a college, we are changing that culture of absolute autonomy. I don't believe in absolute autonomy, because if I believe in absolute autonomy, I should be paying my own salary, which I don't. And I think this is an important aspect to remember. The autonomy is also framed within a structure which is society itself. We are being paid by our taxpayer. Our obligation is towards the people out there. And with the open university concept, and today, of course, with online university, online tuition, online lectures, online meetings, today it's the order of the day that we have opened the doors and the windows of our higher education institutions, and anyone can join this institution. But of course, there is a backlash to it, which we are trying to deal with. At least I feel that some institutions are trying to deal with. And this I define as being higher educations institutions do not hold anymore their exclusive right to provide higher education. We are realizing day after day that we as an institution, whether you're state, whether you're independent, whether you are any other university, we don't hold that exclusivity anymore. There are more attractive competitors outside traditional formal education that we need to respect and synergize ourselves with. And I think this is the challenge here. The open university, the open higher education has transformed the way we think. And if we are stuck on this bicycle and not moving, then we are in danger of reducing a higher education institution to simply a learning institution, learning which might be perceived, I repeat, which might be perceived as being irrelevant to the societies in which we live. So when the wake-up call came, we immediately took action. And the Bologna process, I have been part of that for quite some time. It is obvious what we have done. We have looked at quality assurance, we have looked at the credit system, we have looked at a 3-tier structure for our degrees, we have looked at transferability and mobility. These are the key points that one needs to recall, and which have happened, like, it caught on fire with every single university. I would never have imagined continental universities moving into a 3-tier structure, but they did. It happened, and it made it easier for many students and faculty to move around, to collaborate, and also to make sure that what we call a university, a universal knowledge, is being shared by everyone. But what remained the same, to my way of thinking, of course, and this might be debatable, but you can react to it after my presentation or later. What remained is the medieval classroom structure, I would say so, remained the same. The teacher-student formal vertical rapport, more or less, has remained the same. The focus on the collectivity rather than individual, it's not easy, but it has remained the same. The inevitable support of the state, more or less, has remained the same. The autonomy in the design of programs has more or less remained the same. The governance and management structures have remained. The Senate remains in our university the ultimate deciding factor of our alma mater. The certification, ceremonial awards, all of this is nice, of course, because you will see later on, my big question is, how can we be innovative while we're being traditional, which is not easy, of course, but I think we need to strike a balance there. The same has remained, of course, and thank God it has remained the same, of course, because there are points of reference where young people need to know what the arts and the sciences are, what jurisprudence is all about, what medicine. These are These are the disciplines, and thank God we call them disciplines, because we need to discipline ourselves in how we ensure the quality of life, the safety of our population, how we can prolong life. This is what universities and higher education institutions have given us. But then on the other side, this is the new era now. Now we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about automation. I'm not saying these are disciplines, but they discipline the disciplines. And this is the novelty about it. They discipline the disciplines. Simulated experiences is what students are requesting. Employers keep knocking on our doors. Work-based learning, where is it? We have so many apprentices in our industry, in my country, but many more possibilities are there for our students. And we need to make it, this is me talking to myself, of course, we need to make work-based learning a compulsory unit for our students. The hybrid, remote learning, applied research, micro-credentials. This is the language of today's higher education institution. So the inevitable questions are three. Is today's higher education innovative and relevant enough to address society's needs? I go back to one of the previous slides. How important is it for faculty to experience real-time work in their related fields of education and research? And thirdly, are the Bologna workload structures applicable to an education and training environment dominated by technology? Quickly, some words about these three questions. Technology, of course, as I said earlier, is the language of society. And whether you're doing literature or philosophy or medicine, whatever you are doing, technology comes into it. Mobility, interactions, individualism requires research focus on practical solutions. More and more funding organizations are requesting research which gives solutions, which gives practical solutions to the issues. Then the publications which I mentioned before. It's not a question of how much I publish, but how much of what I have published has been used or has an impact. And then measuring research, we keep saying it to ourselves here in this college, it must have some form of measurable impact. So this is today's HE innovative and relevant enough? These are some points which you might wish to discuss. The second is how important it is for faculty to experience real-time work in industry or in workplaces. Well, workplaces are changing so fast that keeping pace with them requires hands-on experience. And we are seeing this from our apprentices who go and come back to college with a new mindset, discovery of new machinery, discovery of new work practices. Well, this is challenging our lecturers, it's challenging me and my colleagues. Higher education institutions can fast-track their relevancy by sharing time with employers. We do it. Well, I'm sure that many of you in the room do this because it's extremely useful to see what the outside world, beyond the bastions of our higher education institutions, what are people talking about? What is happening in workplaces is of relevance to me as a principal of this college. And then the changing nature of conditions of work. With the post-COVID, many of you know all about this, the way we work has changed, I wouldn't say radically. I would say we missed each other physically, but I would also say that technology has helped us connect with each other more efficiently, more effectively. As president of EAIR2022, which is the European Forum for Vocation Training, we have had 2 annual conferences online. We did spend some money to do so, but it was something which we enjoyed up to a certain extent. It is more enjoyable to come here, to go to the Canary Islands or one of these exotic places and have an annual conference rather than sitting in front of a laptop for 3 days. But it happens, and it's happening with some meetings, so we cannot exclude the fact that working practices have changed. And finally, this is a question which I'm just putting to you to provoke whether the workloads in our higher education institutions are still relevant to the way young people learn today. To my way of thinking, compared to my age, they are learning faster. Do we actually need 60 credits per year? And do we actually need 1 credit equals 25 hours? And those 25 hours of learning, are they really 25 hours of learning? Do we need to challenge all this? I'm just putting it on the table for discussion, but for me, I keep thinking about it, because when I see what academies in industry are doing and how fast they move with the training, I question myself, am I too slow? What are they doing so special that their students can move quickly into employability? You might say, but higher education institutions give them a holistic formation. The employer gives them a very micro-limited formation. Okay, you are correct in saying this, but they have their jobs, they are earning money. Higher education institutions might not be as attractive as they used to be before, because even without a degree, without the degree that we know it today, in 20, 30 years from now, they might not even consider having a degree, or employers might not be asking for degrees. What do we do? Have you ever thought about it? What if employers start dishing out employment and jobs without degrees, without qualifications? I mean, they would be crazy to do so, but they might be asking for their own qualifications, because you know as much as I do that academies are mushrooming everywhere, and many big companies are having their own training there. So this is simply to provoke thinking about it. Then another aspect is, if you need transformation, you need the students on board. In this college, we'll have a new legislation in October. To this date, the students were not on our board of governors. They will be on our board of governors. It is a culture change, believe me. To have your employees on the board of governors and to have the students there, it is a mindset and it is a culture change. And they need preparation, and we need preparation as well, to have a student there and talking about the measures that we will be taking that will affect students, and to expect no reaction from the students. That needs a lot of training for me as a principal and for the governors that will be surrounding me on the day. But it will happen. This is a new legislation which will be presented to Parliament in October. So the point about this slide is, the students are our key clients. Are they passive? Are they active? I'm sure they are very active in many institutions. Do they feel belonging, or do they feel disengaged? Well, sometimes they do feel belonging to, they feel disengaged. Give importance to the voice of students, because it's from students that you learn what is happening in your lecture rooms, in your laboratories, in your workshops. But then, the role of researchers and teachers. You are all, like me, researchers, teachers. Here, so many definitions of these. I won't go into it, because you know exactly what roles you're playing today. What I can say to myself and to you is, be prepared for transformation. Be prepared to change. Be prepared to adopt new methodologies. Be prepared to use technology as much as you can, because this is the language of the new generation. So, if we were to look at all of these challenges, what would be the purpose of higher education today? Well, to my way of thinking, in the age that we are living in, we cannot ignore the individual. We are used to having a classroom. A classroom you never focus on one particular person, but that one particular person might require your attention. How to do that is allowing more time to students. We fail sometimes. I am the first to feel guilty about it, not allowing enough time for the students. But it's from students that you really grasp what is happening in your college or in your higher education institutions. If you don't do it, and you check the dropout rates, then you realize that you are doing something which you shouldn't be doing. Because if there is a dropout rate which is alarming to you, then you need to give more attention to the individual. Then the importance of skills, of course. Practical skills. I know it is happening. We need more of those practical skills, particularly what we call the key competences. And people able to communicate, people able to be flexible. You know all about this. And it is in the third box where I listed the thinking skills, the green skills, the digital skills, including digital content creation. Maybe these are not new words. I'm not saying anything new to you, but I'm simply refocusing my attention and yours to what we ought to be doing in an age of technology. Then the mindsets, flexibility, commitment, autonomy, responsibility. We talk about these every day. Are we transmitting this as principal, as lecturers, as professors in the classroom? And of course, multidisciplinarity means you avoid the silo effect, which is happening, of course, in many higher education institutions. The trends, of course, these trends you know all about. Now, these trends have to be part of your transformation of higher education institutions. I don't need to go into them because they are very obvious. They are simply there to remind you of what these are. So the big questions are, to be or not to be traditionally innovative? That is my big question. To be or not to be traditionally innovative? And the other one is, to be, are we or are we not learner-centered? And the silo disciplines, this is something which I spoke about. So traditionally innovative means what? We need to look into, again, I look into my methods of teaching, assessment, research, institutional arrangements, flexibility. If it's learner-centered, individual orientation, do we know what young people want, what they are aspiring for? Employability, okay, they have done their degree, it's up to them to find a job. But do I, as a lecturer, as a professor, as a principal, do I know what jobs are related to that degree? We are building now a very detailed manual of each occupational standard related to each degree or qualification we have in this college. So that a student, when he comes and enrolls, he knows degree A gives you these possibilities, degree B gives you these possibilities. They might change, of course. Giving them orientation is important. So, just to remind you that in February this year, the World Economic Forum identified 4 trends that are shaping the future of higher education. Again, I won't go into them because as soon as you see the titles, you are all putting things together, learning from everywhere. The second is replacing lectures with active learning. And most of our students prefer active learning than hearing the principal speak for 45 minutes, I'm sure. Teaching skills that remain relevant in a changing world. Again, this is something which is a wake-up call, and using formative assessment instead of high-stake examinations. This is the traditional as against the innovative approaches. You will find in the next slides my argumentation about all this, which I will skip because I am sure you will go into them yourselves, and I want to leave some time for any questions. I will leave you with this quotation from Philip Grosby: slowness to change usually means fear of the new. I wish to put this on my desk so that every time I fear taking the next step, I think twice about it, because if you don't go forward, normally you go backwards. So I think the challenges are huge for all of us, that's for sure. We are being constantly challenged by what is happening around us. The walls that normally surround higher education institutions must come down bit by bit. We have to have an open society, open higher education institutions. A year ago, the Board of Governors declared this college a community college. Why? Because we want the community to make use of our facilities when we are not using our facilities. To make use of the facilities, whether it's a library, whether it's a hall, whether there are facilities related to lectures, we want to open up the higher education institution, MCOST, to our community. Because only in opening up our institutions and letting in the fresh or foul air that comes from society, we will survive. Otherwise, we will keep being challenged by society, and if we don't have answers to society, society will declare ourselves irrelevant. I don't want to end negatively about this. I want to end positively. If it weren't for higher education institutions, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be giving the huge contributions that higher education institutions are giving. But be aware of the challenges outside the perimeter of our campuses. And if you are aware of those challenges there, we can only become stronger if we synergize with these challenges. So I augur that all of you will, unless the walls are already down, will start your process of getting in this fresh air from society so that we become even stronger as higher education institutions. I am being shown that I have 2 minutes, but I will leave those 2 or 5 minutes to any questions from the floor. Thank you. Any questions? Everything is clear or unclear? It's fine. It happens. Mark, thank you. You need a microphone? Yes, a microphone is coming.
Is that on? It's okay? Yeah. James, on one of your slides, you said blue sky thinking is non-productive. My question is, how do we know?
I didn't understand your question. Sorry, Mark.
On one of the slides, it said blue sky thinking
blue sky research
is non-productive. And my question is, how do we know?
How do we know? Yes. Very simple, Mark, at least by my own way of thinking. If a report lands on a shelf and no one implements any of the recommendations there, whether it's a report or a publication, that for me, I wouldn't say it's a waste of time because it can be referred to years later. But I really am allergic to having my shelves with so many of these and not doing anything about it. Now, funding is attracting more research, that's for sure. But is it funding that is driving us to do research, or is it society's needs that is driving us to give society solutions? I leave that as an open question. From my long experience in research and education, it has been both. Funding, driving me to do research, to get funds, of course, and publish, and become a professor. On the other hand, when I did research, which meant that the recommendations have brought change, my level of satisfaction was beyond 100. So we need to strike a balance here, always. This is why you cycle, to strike a balance. But again, with the attraction of funding, my fear is that funding is driving research. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but maybe I'm slightly right as well. That there's a craze for funding, craze for doing research. But what sort of research? And what is it leading to? How is it impacting our young people and society? These are open questions, Mark, but I have no clear answer over that. I'm simply saying to myself, be aware that this reality exists today with the multiple amounts of funding that there is for research. Not enough in my country, but we are attracting funds from outside. So that is an attraction for us. And it's also building the capacity of our own staff, of course, of our own lecturing staff. I sign practically proposals for research, and Clifford has a big smile on his face over there, once a week, twice a week, sometimes it's 3 times a week. That's good. Attracting funds, okay, fine. What we do with that is something which and Clifford knows that we will look into it. We will look into it to see what has happened over a number of years with the funding and the good research that takes place, of course, because there is some very, very good material. But I hate seeing books on shelves and reports on shelves, but maybe that's my weakest link. Any more questions? No more questions? Very good. Is there a coffee break or something else now? Ah, you are the compare, not me. Sorry.
Thank you, Professor Kallea, for your keynote speech for today. Talking about books on shelves, this gave us the best segue, we hope. So it was... it's the best connection we could make. So the next, in presentation, you spoke a lot about transformation, and the book itself is Transformation Fast and Slow, Digitalization, Quality and Trust in Higher Education. And Bruno Brucker, who is one of the editors, together with Rosalind Pritchard, Claire Milson, and Renee Kremko, will present this book to us and tell us more about it. So, books on shelves.
We also have an e-book copy if you want, or if you would prefer. Okay, my slide is here already. I was afraid that I had to talk a little bit longer before the slide came, but that's not going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to keep it very short. My name is Bruno Brucker. I'm a member of the executive committee of EAIR since a couple of years. I'm also the editor-in-chief of our book. And a couple of years ago, we decided with the EAIR Executive Committee to develop a series linked to our community of policymakers, practitioners, and researchers in higher education. And as you can see on the slide, the series has the same name as what we stand for, Higher Education Linking Policy, Research, Policy, and Practice. So what we do with this book is every year we try to attract people who would like to publish their paper in the book, and we will give that same book to the participants of the next forum. So we have now published the third volume, Transformation, Fast and Slow, which is in fact the result of the forum of last year. It has 13 chapters, quite some contributors have participated, and I think we can be very proud on the result. For your information, you can all collect your copy at the Brill office that is right in the big hall where we had lunch yesterday, and you collect that copy free of charge. It is included in the price and so on. So I think that's great. And if you want to have more information about it, Evelyn from Brill, who is here as well, I don't see her yet, but she can provide you more information on the publication process if you would like to. Second thing that I would like to tell you is, of course, we are preparing the fourth volume already. So, if you would like to be part of this book for next year, you can send me your proposal. There has been a call for proposal launched with a very tight deadline, which was initially put on the 9th, but that's this week. So I propose that we extend it a little bit. And let's say that by half September, if you would like to have your book proposal your paper in this book, then you can send me your proposal by the 17th or something like that. Now we have a quite tight review process because we want to have the book delivered on time for the next forum. So please send me your proposals. There is a review process, so I cannot promise you anything because we try to keep standard high. But send me your proposal, we will have a look at it, and then you will be in touch for the rest of the publication process. As you can see, we have put together the editorial team for the next book already. This will be together with James, with Mark, and with Claire, who is not here today, but who has been participating in the editorial team as well for the previous editions. So that's it for me, I think. I've said enough about this book. I don't know whether there are any questions. If not, you can grab your copy today at the Brill office where Evelyn is situated in the big hall. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. So the plenary ends here, and there is a technical break now where you can also grab a coffee. So the coffee is available at MRC. Thank you so much, and good day.